Hi, I'm Marilyn, and this video is going to explore questions about wisdom, such as what is the source of what makes a person wise? Does wisdom come with age? And you might be surprised at the answer I come up with. Does wisdom come with increased knowledge? And if you feel you are lacking in wisdom, what are some things that you can do to improve upon this? So firstly, wisdom, according to dictionary.com, it defines wisdom as the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment, soundness of an action or decision with regard to the application of experience, knowledge, and good judgment. However, I do slightly disagree with the quality of having experience. This comes down to answering the first question at the beginning of the video. What is the source of what makes a person wise? Wisdom comes from a deep connectedness to who you are at your core. It comes from deep understanding. It comes from being connected to your intuition. Some people get confused of what intuition is, and sometimes that can get confused when you have experienced past trauma or you have been conditioned to behave in a negative way due to past occurrences. But when we're able to kind of disengage from your past trauma and able to connect to that intuition and therefore access wisdom. I personally believe that true wisdom at its core is natural, but it doesn't mean that you cannot develop it. You can always develop wisdom. Going back to the quality of having experience that defines wisdom, well, I slightly disagree with it because you can have wisdom without going through experiences, as I referred to before as natural wisdom. You can also learn from other people's mistakes as well. Experience does help, but it's not necessary. Now, does wisdom come with age? Well, I'm going to say not necessarily. The premise is that as you age, you have gained more experience and therefore you've learned and therefore have gained wisdom. While in theory that's true, and that may be true in a lot of circumstances, it's not necessarily true because there are people that keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And this is not wisdom. Complacency is also an indication that you're not getting wiser. You are either staying the same or maybe regressing. And I've even seen experiences of people as they age who have even regressed in wisdom, who have actually were wiser when they were younger and then started to make series of poor judgments and bad decisions as they got older. That's a small percentage, but I have seen this happen before. In theory, yes, as you get older, you tend to get wiser, but it's not always the case. And complacency does inhibit this. Not willing to learn more or not willing to challenge your own views work against wisdom as you age. I am being careful to distinguish mental sharpness and wisdom because yes, of course, as you get older, your mental sharpness or your level of being able to learn does tend to decline as you age, and that is normal. But of course, that does not necessarily mean that it affects wisdom. It doesn't necessarily mean that. You can still increase in wisdom and have mental sharpness decline at the same time. So you can get wiser as you're older, but not necessarily. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but I have, of parents describing their children as old souls. I don't know if you've heard the term old souls before. And there's a small percentage of children who have a natural wisdom to them and all of a sudden may say things or quotes to their parents that are just incredibly wise, and parents wonder where that came from. There are people that believe we have had past lives. Certain people have carried the wisdom of past lives to their current lives. And so that is the theory of why the term old souls is used. Does wisdom come from increased knowledge? Not necessarily. So it is the case that The more knowledge you have, it does definitely help to increase wisdom, to improve wisdom. Knowledge is very important, and I definitely wouldn't negate knowledge, especially being someone who values knowledge and science. I've seen in my own life that knowledge has improved my wisdom, but it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody with a PhD is wiser than someone who doesn't have an education. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Intellect and wisdom are separate things, but if you have natural wisdom, for example, I would say that gaining more knowledge, knowing more facts, knowing more about what's happening around the world and different subjects, knowing about different subjects does help with your wisdom, and it does help to articulate what you want to say to other people. Also, having the knowledge of wise practices is not necessarily wise. What is key is putting the wise practices into action and how that person incorporates wisdom in their daily lives. So you can't just talk the talk, you need to walk the talk. If you are lacking in wisdom, what are some ways that we can improve upon this? Well, number one, I would say is self-discipline. I would say self-discipline and wisdom go hand in hand, but this does not mean that someone who is self-disciplined is automatically wise, because there are other reasons why someone has good self-discipline other than wisdom. It could be perfectionism, which is not wise. But I do believe that people who are wise are self-disciplined. I would say wisdom's worst enemy is being impulsive. Being impulsive is just connecting to your animal instinct, the animal part of who you are. We want to connect with intuition, the more spiritual part of who we are, not just animal impulse. So developing self-discipline is key. Being true to your word, integrity goes hand in hand with this as well. 2, spend time with people that are wiser than you. So if you don't know anyone physically in your life who is wiser than you, then you can turn to maybe social media, like on YouTube, find people that are wiser than you, philosophers who have wisdom. And of course, not all philosophers are saying the right thing. Like, philosophers can be wrong, but the great thing about exploring philosophies is it just helps to look at things from a different perspective. So that's where they're good, but of course they're not always right. And look to people who are inspirational to you, but who also practice what they preach. 3, self-reflection practices. This includes meditation or journaling, self-reflection on your life and how things are going, analyzing what's working for you, what's not working for you. This can be a very wise practice in order to improve upon your life and your life circumstances. 4, accountability. So accountability is really important, that whenever there's a problem or a conflict that we have in our lives, that we take responsibility and acknowledge our part in the situation. So if we have experience where we're getting divorced or something, that we don't just blame our ex-spouse on the issue, that we take responsibility for our part in making the situation worse. Or not just blaming our parents for causing certain issues in our personalities or something like that, but taking ownership and being accountable for what we can change. Wise people are accountable for their actions. Wise people have the courage to admit when they're wrong. 5, being secure with being unpopular or not liked. Of course, we do all want to be liked, but wiser people tend to not be so reliant on people liking them, because a lot of the times their opinions or their viewpoints can kind of be ahead of their time. It can be a little bit more advanced than what the current population believes in. Sometimes their viewpoints aren't very popular. Wise people would rather be true to themselves rather than being popular. If you have any questions or feedback to add to any of the things that I've said in this video, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.